All right, we're rolling. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. Obviously, on Wednesday, if you guys tuned in, we talked with these fine gentlemen, Mr. Nick Cousvis and Cobi Pellerito, about jerkbaits, about everything, almost anything you can think of jerkbait fishing. So if you guys haven't checked that one out, I highly recommend it. I'm not going to make these gentlemen introduce themselves again. If you want to learn more about them, watch Wednesdays or check out the links below to their own personal shows when we had them on for their own podcast. But today we are going to be talking about swim baits, and not like big swim baits, not like big glide baits and such. We're talking about, smaller paddle tails, your 2 inches to 4 inches, your Kayaks, like Anthony's holding up, where those
It's a spark shed show, probably. Let's be real.
Yeah. Those things don't catch fish, like Nick said.
No.
No, but it's going to be an interesting show because I feel like, like we talked about with jerkbaits, how it's a generally easy bait to kind of use, but there are a lot of details that can be overlooked. So kind of starting things off, I guess we'll start with Cobi to kick things off. We started with Nick on with jerkbaits, but talking about swim baits, because they are a universal bait, just like jerkbaits. You can throw them year round; they're always going to get you bites. Talk about just your primal, your best conditions for throwing a swim bait.
That's a good question. Can I say anything? No, I'm just kidding. Any place, no. They're probably the closest thing to a universal bait, though. There really is a lot of applications that you can use them. Ideal scenario, man. If I'm thinking from a smallmouth standpoint, again, fall time, pre-spawn, they will absolutely eat it. It's fantastic when you're covering water on shallow flats and stuff like that. But if I had to pick like my favorite time or like an ideal day, it would be a nice, crisp, windy fall day when that temperatures are dropping back into the 50s and 60s. And those fish are cruising along rock to sand transitions or rock edges. And you're dealing with fish, up on flats or up on, on breaks or on edges and that kind of stuff. That would probably be my ideal conditions. And, usually the sunshine seems to help more in the fall time. So I'd probably pick a sunny day, but with some good amount of wind. And that would be my ideal. But like I said, they're something that, you can keep at, you can keep at arm's reach almost any time and have an application for it.
Right. Nick?
Yeah, Cobi said it 100%. For sure, a little bit of wind and, swim baits, when we're talking about smallmouth, they're really going to work anytime. Doesn't matter. Calm, sun, wind, cloud. But obviously with a little bit of chop, especially in our waters, gets the fish a little bit, gets them going. You got some current flowing in there. Bait fish are moving. So swim bait's obviously going to be, it's going to catch them. But if I'm targeting a certain depth, swim bait, I'm just always going to throw it. Then it's just about picking colors and weights and all that stuff. But if you're throwing it and you're doing the right thing, you're going to catch fish on it.
Right. Andy?
I personally like sunny with a little bit of wind. I'll even go as far as throwing it in slick, calm conditions and go ultra finesse with it. When nothing else is working, I'll go to like a little 1/8 ounce ball head and chuck around a 3-inch swim bait and can usually get another bite or two.
Yeah, I think in that 1/8 ounce too, like especially up shallow, whether it's a smallmouth fishery or a largemouth fishery, I think that's like Cobi mentioned earlier, is probably the closest bait you probably could get to a universal bait that's going to get you bit literally just about everywhere you're going to go. Just something kind of like we talked about on Wednesday with the jerkbaits. It just kind of provokes that fish's instinct where it kind of just can't resist. Especially and I don't know if you guys play around, with speed and everything, because I think that's one of the biggest things that's overlooked, or it could be a mistake, I guess I should say, is a good way to put it, when it comes to fishing these paddle tails, is how fast you're reeling them. I think, and you guys can entirely disagree with this, please do if I'm wrong, but slower is better. I probably am wrong, but 99%.
I'm kidding.
But at least for me, is slower is better. Do you guys agree, disagree? Nick?
No, I don't disagree with you. But a lot of times when I'm throwing a swim bait, I change the speed of it. So I might speed it up and then, slow it down. I sort of think of a minnow in the water. It's never really doing one thing. It's not being constant. So I'm trying to mimic that in the water. But yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong crawling it along the bottom just nice and slow and just bumping off a rock here and there. I mean, that deflection and all that stuff, it's always going to trigger bites. So yeah.
Right. Coby? Yeah,
I'm in the same boat. I think it, again, kind of like, again, what we talked about with adjusting things with the jerkbait, you can transfer that to the same thing here. A swim bait is universal, but you got a whole array of different heads, different styles of, of swimmers themselves, and then also just the different applications and utilizations, from going from a bait that's virtually never contacting the bottom, like a small finesse one, like an Okashira head or stuff like that, up in the column, to when you start, slowing down or cooling down in the water, and then you're transitioning more to a bottom dragging swim bait. That's kind of when those retrieves or speeds come in handy. Because there are times when they'll eat it when you're just winding it along however fast you want to go. But oftentimes, just finding that range and applying that bait in the correct range is the biggest factor. And then having that retrieve, that nice, steady, consistent retrieve to keep that bait in that range. And like Nick mentioned, your bait fish are never constantly just chilling and doing this. They're just not. They're always adjusting, moving around, hiding, covering, whatever. And so that's kind of what you want to emulate throughout your retrieve, or at different periods in your retrieve, to kind of, mimic that natural response, All
right. Yeah, that's a great point. Like when you're slow rolling it, kind of add it in like a quick, 2 cycles, because like when you're watching, videos or watching bait fish in the water, or anything kind of like an underwater footage, you see that the bait fish kind of swimming along very slowly, and they will have a couple bursts where and then they'll slowly pause again, adding something in there for sure. And Andy, I cut you off, so go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I mean, I was going to say swim bait, I think, can be a very technical but easy technique to use. One of my favorite ways to do it is I'll actually pop my rod tip. I'm not going to tell you how many times I'll do it or how, but actually on that kill, when you kill it after that pop, as you almost like pendulum your rod back down, there's nothing better than all of a sudden your line hopping. You're just like, oh gosh, there he is.
Yeah. It's funny.
Slug away on him.
Yeah, the pendulum. I was watching a video from Mikey Balls today. He was doing exactly that for spotted bass. And it's a technique that I've seen used, but I've never actually tried it. And you guys are. I'm curious if you guys have tried this as well. Is especially these deeper fish, even if they're suspended too, is where you'll find and you'll play around with how far out you get your swim bait to stop, and you kill it, but you kill it on tighter line with kind of like a little bit of a bow, so that it like you mentioned, Andy mentioned, it pendulums. Mm-hmm. So it still has the tail's kicking, but it's falling right into that school of fish, and that can be pretty killer. I mean, do you guys play around with that sort of deal at all? Coby?
Yeah, absolutely. Presenting it, to deeper fish, or to fish that, that are in an area that you're targeting or casting, it can absolutely make a difference. I think, having that bait just kind of fluttering down or presenting itself very naturally down into their realm, rather than just crashing into it, can definitely make a difference, especially, as Nick and I are constantly referring to with smallmouth that are very visual and able to see in the water, and they're able to see what's going on. That being said, there are times when having it come crashing down in their face, they'll get real excited and go over there and eat it because they're all curious as to what it is. But, there's definitely times when, whether it's a school that you've been catching or it's a group of fish that are pressured in a pressured lake, there that natural entry or natural presentation, whether it be swimming it into those fish or swinging it into those fish, that can definitely get some extra bites.
Definitely. Nick?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and you can even further that by, the style of swim bait you're using. So, for example, if you're catching fish with that bait swinging down like that, a spark shad with that flatter belly is going to glide down a little bit more than, say, a hasdong, which will be more vertical. Even if you're holding that rod up, it's going to come down much sharper than a spark shad. And then again, shape of the head, the weight of the head, how fast it hits the bottom, all that stuff plays a role. So again, the nice thing about a swim bait is it could literally be a chuck and wind, but you can get very technical in it, and you can find a pattern within a pattern by spending some time playing around with them. So
yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that, the difference between that body shape and how that can affect your point of entry for like a pendulum standpoint. That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and you can even go one step further and even go like the freestyle and the mag draft, the 6-inch.
Right.
It's still a soft plastic detail bait, but it's a completely different thing. You could put a big swim bait head on it or a belly hook, and it's going to act completely different either way.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what are your guys' thoughts on, and I've heard this kind of thrown around here and there, but it's, we're talking about swim baits and kind of like alone, like swim baits that are alone, whether it's on, an EWG with a belly weighted hook or like a jig head. I mean, we're not talking about it on like swim jigs or anything like that, but those standalone swim baits in dirtier water, do you think that there's still a place? Because obviously it's, for me at least, it's more of a cleaner water presentation. Do you guys still think that standalone swim bait has a place in that more dirtier water scenario? Nick, if you want to start us off.
I don't think Nick knows what dirty water is.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's fair. I shouldn't have asked the Canadian about
Dirty water is drinking water right here. To be honest with you, like when we're talking particularly smallmouth, I mean, 90% of my swim bait fishing is really done with a jig head. I don't use belly weights and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I'm using spinning rods mostly all the time. There could be situations where you may want to go to something like that if you got a lot of grass around or something. But even still, for me, that the grass that's on the bottom, I don't mind getting stuck in it. A lot of times that initial pop out of there will trigger a lot of strikes. So I'm a big fan of jig heads. When it comes to largemouth, then that's a whole other story. But when I'm fishing smallmouth, I'm almost always using the jig head.
Okay, Coby.
Yeah, I think, I can concur there with Nick, but I think the dirt there, especially coming from my experience with the shallow water stuff, like I mentioned, some of the areas that we target smallmouth over here get churned up very, very quickly and very easily. And so even so, in those scenarios where you would think they would have a hard time locating something with as subtle of a tail as, as just a 3-inch spark shad, for example, it is amazing to me how they continue to track down and find a bait when they can only see, a foot. Our visibility sometimes for weeks in the fall will be 6 inches to a foot. And we have, fish just cruising up in shallow water, 6 to 8 foot of water, that are able to track down a single swim bait. Now, don't get me wrong. That's usually when I'll tie on like that blueback matte chartreuse crankbait or something more obnoxious, kind of get that attention, hone them in. But when it's calmer, I think there definitely still is a time and a place. And it happens very frequently when they are in an aggressive and a feeding mood that they will still absolutely somehow track that thing down with that lateral line they've got going on. They can feel all that going on, and they're just very aware of what's going on in their environment, even with the lights turned off, for example. And so I definitely think there is still a time and a place. And you can even get into it's outside, getting a little bit tricky here. Megabass Japan makes a bait called the knifeback shad that is a very aggressive swimming. It's a harder plastic. It's a very aggressive, very vibration, oriented swim bait. And you can get into stuff like that. Down south, guys will throw like a Bass Tricks. Guys will throw like, a hollow body swim bait. They have a very hard thumping swim. And so, because, a lot of those fisheries down south, they have very limited visibility. And so I definitely think it still does come into play. It's just that those fish are hunting with that vibration rather than sight, instead of. So, that's at least from my experience. That's
Yeah.
And that was a point that I was hoping we bring up too, was even though because I've seen that argument spit around as single swim baits in dirtier water, because you have a lot of guys that'll probably go to a swim jig or a chatterbait or a spinnerbait before they even think about throwing a single swim bait. And like you said, that lateral line, I think those fish feel a lot more than we give them credit for. And even without that, I mean, even in dirtier water, especially in sunnier conditions, I mean, that silhouette, they can see a lot more, even if that water is dirty. That silhouette helps them see shadows, so that they can track that swim bait down. But Andy, do you have anything else that you can add on to that point?
And all of my swim bait fishing has portrayed around smallmouth on Lake Erie and the Upper Niagara. So in this fall, I did tinker a little bit with smallmouth on a single swimmer, and I was just dragging it. Well, I was casting and reeling it in, but I was literally dragging it and looking for rock. And when the rock was there, I'd actually pause it for a second and just almost shake it like a shaky head and then start reeling it again. So completely different thing, but I was hoping they would hone in on it with that lateral line and eat. And that was the only way I could get bit this fall when the water got to be like 45 degrees and off color, because it blew for like 40 days straight. So,
there's I'll tell you this: when we used to do a trip out to Lake Chautauqua back in the days in the spring, and it'd be 4 or 5 boats. We were taking out dealers and stuff like that. So we'd all kind of fish together because everybody knew each other, fishing the same shorelines, and everybody was, it rained for days, so you get all that mud that comes in from all the
crates.
It gets super dirty, right? So, and then it was windy that day, so the whole lake was pretty much a dirt bomb. Everybody was throwing like big crankbaits, spinner baits, all this flashy stuff. And I was joking with the guy I was in the boat with. I said, you know what? I'm going to pull this swim bait out, like no blade on it, nothing. I'm just going to go straight swim bait. I think it was a skinny dipper. And, I had like something bright, and I said, I'm going to go in behind him, but I went a little bit heavier, and I was just bumping rock and wood, but aggressively. And I was crushing them. I got largemouth, smallmouth on it. It was ridiculous. Like it went beyond what I thought. And it was a bad day. It was windy. It was cold. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to try this just because everybody's doing something different. And, we were catching all these fish behind the guy that was in my boat. He's like, hey, do you got another one of those baits? I'm like, well, yeah, like go figure. But, just doing something different. Trust me, in these lakes where you get situations where it can get dirty, these fish adjust to it. They know how to eat. Everybody thinks, oh, you know what? It's dirty these 3 days. They're not going to eat. No, they are going to eat. It's just you gotta think differently on how to catch them. They figure it out.
Yeah, and I think
go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I think it just compares to, think about yourself in your own house when your lights turn off and it's dark, right? You're very aware of your surroundings. You're very listening. You're keen. I think it's the same scenario for those fish too, right? There, that lead head bumping into a rock is making a distinct noise. It's making a rustling, and and you might be just kind of how we're more aware when we're in a scenario and something changes. It's the same thing with those fish too, right? They're still hungry. They still want their midnight snack, whatever. So they're still gonna, shuffle along. And in a case when you're, like what they're dealing with, when it gets cloudy for a couple of days and it comes back through, they're still, like Nick said, they're still eating. It's just a matter of them being more aware and honing in. They're using their other senses as opposed to visibility to track down their snacks or their foods, So
it's a really good point.
Yeah. And I definitely think it's a way more of a timing deal when it's muddy, especially in the fall. 100% a timing deal, because you'll get little like 15-minute periods where you better catch them because you're not going to get another bite for 2-3 hours. I found, at least this fall. So,
right.
We should do a segment on like muddy water, like dirty water. This would be amazing.
Would you learn something, Nick?
I'm always, you know what? If you stop learning, you might as well quit because you're learning.
Yeah. You're never going to know it all. Not with fish.
That's right. Yeah.
I think Nick just wants to sit in and learn about dirty water because he's like, what is dirty water? I don't know what this is.
One day. I saw it one time in New York, but I've never seen it since then.
I was all pumped to go across the border last year, and then COVID came, and that was the end of that. So I was twiddling my thumbs here.
I heard they're actually going to open the border soon. You just have to have a negative test to get across.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
you'll
that's
see
what I heard the other day. Yeah.
That makes sense. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You'll see some crazy kayaker out on Simcoe then this spring.
He's got 14 days.
Yeah, you know what? Simcoe's closed until the 3rd week in June. You can't fish it. So,
jeez.
Yeah.
And they're still spawning. So.
Oh yeah, they're spawning in July. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I totally off track, but Simcoe is probably. I went down to Lake Chickamauga, which was on top of my bucket list in November. So Simcoe has taken the first spot on bucket list.
Cool. That's cool.
You know, man, honestly, I've caught 4 smallmouth over 7 pounds, and 4 of them have come from Lake Simcoe. Yeah, I've not. No, I'm sorry. I did get one on Lake Ontario, but it was I'm gonna count it because it was 7, but it was a bedfish. But if you take, yeah. So it's cheating a little bit, but yeah,
that's still awesome.
You know what the funny thing is? I was out with my buddy and I said, there's a bed over there, cast over there, and he casts over there, and he misses one. He goes, oh, it's a small one. I go, are you sure? He goes, yeah. I pitch in there, and it's a 7.
No.
7.4, giant.
Terrible.
I'm sure you is.
Yeah.
How do you feel? How do you feel?
Oh,
the rest of the
he was not happy. He goes, Nick, that's my personal best. You just stole it from me. I'm like, I gave you a shot. You didn't want it.
You said it was a small one.
Oh boy.
Again, off topic here. I was listening to another podcast a couple of weeks ago, and it was a guy from the South talking about coming up here to fish the smelly spawn. And he was like, well, I'll tell you, you really got to have this bait. You know, this bait is the best during spawn. I'm like, no, just stop. Like, you could throw a leaf at these spawning smallmouth and they're gonna hit it. Don't come to me and talk about baits during smallmouth spawn.
There's 100 guys out on the lake, and they all throwing something different. And they're just so aggressive. They will not let anything. I mean, we had this fish called Bob in 12 feet of water. It was probably a different fish every year, but it was always a big one. So we called him Bob. This thing, you would sit there and see the fish in 10 feet, 12 feet. You'd pitch a tube there. It hits the water, and he's coming right up for it 10 feet off the bottom to eat it. Before it gets down 3 feet, he's already got in his mouth. I'm like,
Bob.
We don't get to this fish first. This fish is done. He's probably propellers. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
That's crazy.
That time of year is nuts. I mean, there's one of our lakes. It got really dirty during the spawn time, and to try to find some of the deeper spawners, because it's usually a clear body of water.
Yeah.
I just took a really obnoxious glide bait, and it's like we're in like 15 foot of water, and it was like. It was an S waver, and it was maybe a foot under the surface, and you just watch these dark figures just rise from it. They won't eat it, but like they'll come after it. They're just
show themselves. You know where they're.
Yeah,
good way to show themselves.
Yeah, you don't hear it, but they're talking mad trash to that swim bait as it comes by. They're mad trash. Get out of here, son! You better not stick around.
Yeah, they're using words we can't say. But,
it's just crazy. Like, everyone's always like, largemouth, you literally had to like hit them in the tail, hit them in the head, hit them in the tail. You know, the smallmouth, you can miss the bed by 20 feet if you get the right one going, and they'll come over and eat it. They're not smart.
No. Well, you know what? It's sort of like, it's the whole thing of, when they're super active, they get dumb. So when you're watching them like crazy in the summertime, they're aggressive and they'll eat anything. But on those days that they want to eat, that's when it becomes a little bit tougher. So, when they're on beds, they're just protecting that nest, and they refuse to give up, man.
They're so protective.
They're amazing creatures. Amazing.
How do you think they became hyper aggressive with gobies? Now that gobies are just sitting around that nest, I feel like that has like intensified the aggression. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
That's the idea of listening to smallmouth talk crap is still in my brain. That I don't even care that we're off in this rabbit hole because it's so funny to me. Have you guys seen that?
Red eyes and smoke coming out of his gills.
Have you guys seen the little like comedy that Hunter Shryack does, where he puts the wig on and he like, I can't remember his like
Larry
his
the Legend.
Larry the Legend. I could totally see him doing a spin-off of Larry the Legend and like making a comedy out of that.
That would be good.
I don't know why that popped in my brain, but back on topic here. When it comes to swim baits, obviously there's different lengths. You take a Kitech, for example, you have a 2.8, 3.3, 3.8. I think Spark Shad goes, is it 3 and then
3, 4, 5.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and obviously I think for the majority of the, of picking lengths, it comes to, forage, the size of the forage they're chasing, and then, obviously if you want to generate a bigger bite. But do you guys kind of have a system of how you choose, how big of a swim bait you're going to throw?
Kobe?
That's a good question. I don't know if I necessarily have a system. I think having it goes on like kind of the what I'm approached with the day, right? If I'm dealing with dirtier water, if I'm dealing with, more aggressive fish or larger bait, for example, like when we get fish that'll eat ciscos and stuff in the fall, and ciscos are a little bit larger generally, or if we're dealing with alewives and they're a little bit smaller, or if the water clarity, or the pressure, all those things kind of come into play for me. But that being said, my most confident, or the thing that I will start with, is typically the smaller size, like the 3 inch is a really great starting point. For me personally, with the Spark Shed, just because I know I'm going to get bites. And again, it kind of goes back to that initial run-in with a fish and seeing how, the way that they react or bite that bait or eat that bait is something that, that I'll kind of use. But that kind of comes in with my nature of typically going with the more subtle or more finesse kind of starting point, and then kind of working up or dealing with the fish's, mood for the day, right? If I feel those fish are eating more aggressively, or if I'm just running with little dudes, then maybe I'll mix in the bigger one. And sometimes if I just want to show them something different, like Nick mentioned with jerkbaits, if you go back through with a different color, I'll do the same thing with a jerkbait or swim bait. And then I'll pick up, I've got a 4-inch right here too. I'll pick up a 4-inch, after that 3-inch and just show them another profile, another bait. And I think that oftentimes can help get other fish. You can go back through, we see oftentimes in the Great Lakes in the spring, you can go through an area with one bait and then come back through another area and catch fish that didn't even touch the bait the first time, that are just solely looking at something different. I don't know what it is that makes them tick, but yeah, that's usually my starting point. Is I'll start with something smaller and then work my way up or adjust based on what I see accordingly.
Nick?
Like literally, it's the same thing for me. I'm more of a finesse guy. I use the 3-inch Spark Shad and Hasdong Shad quite a bit early in the year, and I'll mix it up. It's not really because I'll go to a 4-inch or even a 5-inch sometimes in the spring if again the water's dirty or there's other boats in the area. Most guys are throwing finesse stuff, so I may go to something a little bit different, something a little bit bigger. Maybe I'm not going to get as many bites, but I might get the right bite. So, but day in and day out, it's a 3-inch Spark Shad and a 3-inch Hasdong Shad. It's really hard. Fall rate is different between the two because again, like I said, Spark Shad's got the flatter belly. It's going to fall a little bit slower. It'll fall a little bit different. The Hasdong Shad, with that same head is going to drop like a torpedo, right? It's a very narrow cylinder and it just drops real quick, cuts water and gets down to the bottom. So again, I play with both, but small is definitely for smallmouth. In certain lakes here, it's like, when we go to Wisconsin, it's all finesse. Like if you bring crankbaits and big swim baits and spinner baits, man, you're in trouble. You're going to catch some fish, but it's just hard to get a lot of bites. It's all finesse. It's all hair jigs and Ned rigs and small swim baits and just being real finesse, light line, 6-pound test. And a lot of our lakes up here, that's what it is, especially when the fish are off, right?
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Andy?
I'm not a swim bait fisherman very much, so I just started dabbling with it because if I'm smallmouth fishing, I'm drop shotting. So 99.9% of the time. But I do like the Hasdong Shad on a drop shot. So that's usually one of the ways I will fish that over like on a ball head.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. So kind of getting into, obviously I want to talk about setups because I think that's super important. And that's, shocker, another debate that Andy and I argue about all the time. And I've heard different debates about, longer rod, shorter rod, but is there anything, ball head wise or jig head wise you guys do that you tinker with at all without releasing any? I know I told you guys I wouldn't make you release any juice at all, but maybe some different pointers for people, maybe, rigging the swim bait, obviously, like super glue is a big thing. But any other little kind of pointers here and there for when rigging swim baits? Kobe, you want to go first?
Okay. I knew Nick was going to wait. I
think Nick's just waiting for Kobe to go first.
You got a waiting game there.
He wants to see what secrets I'm going to reveal, so he doesn't have to reveal his first.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on. I know what you're thinking.
So I agree with you that Kobe's going to say one secret, and then Nick is going to go, yeah, I agree. So
Yeah, you know what? Right.
Nick has to
Take the words out of my mouth. That's
Yeah,
That's fair. No. As far as heads, there's a few companies that make some fantastic ones. Obviously, Megabass has some very finesse options with the Okashira head and the Okashira screw head. I'm sure you guys have seen back in my Instagram the day before they released the new ones. I was probably the world's biggest hoarder of the previous Okashira screw head, and so I used to throw those a ton. I throw them a lot. There's still definitely a time and a place in the springtime that's an awesome little bladed head, and even just the regular Okashira head. Again, with the kind of again talking about the different rates of fall, the way that the bottom is cupped in the head, it only comes in a 16th and an 8th, so it's a real shallow or real finessey presentation. But I thoroughly enjoy fishing that one with the smaller spark shads, the 3-inch spark shads or the Hazardong shads, because as you can see, it doesn't have a real big bulky keeper, so it's not tearing up that real small thin body. The body balance head, I've got one right here. Hook's a little rusty, unfortunately. Body balance head is another one that I like with the bigger stuff, like the 5-inch one. So I don't throw it a ton. I find that it kind of overwhelms the 4-inch size a little bit too much. For my personal taste at least, but if I haven't thrown the 5-inch one for whether it be largemouth or for bigger smallmouth or deeper situations that I'm throwing something bigger, I will pair it with this one, but that doesn't happen a ton for me for smallmouth. Yeah, as far as other heads, I mean, you can get into like the plain football head for throwing offshore stuff, dealing with deeper. When it gets real cold, I'll start dragging a football head a little bit around around those edges and just pair it with that big Hazardong because it's just a bigger flat profile that stays down deep, but it kind of has that nice subtle tail walk that Hazardong has. But yeah, those are some of my favorites for the most part for kind of getting started with the lineup there.
Heck yeah, Nick.
Yeah, I agree with whatever Kobe said. No, no, he is right. The Oka shear head. I mean, for years we had it. Nobody knew about it here. I mean, even when it was out, a lot of guys didn't buy them. But for shallow water, that head is amazing. Both the with the spinner on it and then just on its own. It just kind of depends whether I want flash or don't want flash. I play around with both. Obviously, too, with the propeller, it's going to give you more lift too. So if you don't want that, then you have to slow it down that much more. So speed and all that plays a role. But shallow water, that's really all I use when it comes to shallow water smallmouth. Those heads, you don't need anything else. When I start getting deeper, yeah, I play around. I like football heads for certain situations. If windy days and I'm bumping that rock pretty hard, I love that football head because it's always the way it bounces off rock. It's always making that swim bait do something different. Yes. Triggers a lot of strike.
Yes.
On those calmer days when you want to swim it more, then I go to more like a shad style head, and try and go a little narrow to get that bait down in the deeper water quicker and then keep down at the depth that I want it. So I have control over how deep that bait's getting. It's not rising on me all the time. You know what I mean? So, but that's the deal.
Yeah.
The only thing I could tell you is that I'm a big fan. I know a lot of guys don't do it, but I'm a big fan of I get really neurotic when it comes to, the look of the bait. So one thing that a lot of guys don't pay attention to is, you got to make sure that when you're fishing in clear water and you're really finessing a bait, that bait's got to be really straight on that hook.
Yeah.
If it comes off a bit, it's just going to run a little bit wonky on you. It's not going to stay in the depth that you want it to. And it just
might roll.
Yeah, roll a little bit, so that is real key. And the other thing is I really like to cut the head of the Hazardong, not all the way off. I just want it to fit snug on the back of the head. So depending on the head, it's just my, me being neurotic and just making sure that it looks real. I've had fish with both. 2 guys on the boat, 1 guy with just the whole thing and the other guy not. And it's just like, for me, it's like, maybe it's just that one bite, that 7-pounder or that 1-6 that just is like, there's something about this, and I could be wrong, but it's a confidence thing.
Yeah. That was going to be one of my questions too, is rigging that and making sure like that plastic to the jig head is flush, because like you talked about a hole, right? So there's that jig head and there's like that small little triangle gap between
That's right.
the nose of the swim bait and that jig head. That's going to be one of my questions if you guys thought how crucial that was. And obviously, Nick, you gave your take on it, but Kobe, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think rigging making sure that the bait is. I mean, the spark shads that I have on hand are just little crooked, beat up ones from the side of the boat, but making sure that not only that the bait is flush and flat and straight, but also making sure that it's all the way through to the tail, it's straight. Both horizontally and vertically on that hook. That's extremely important. We all have done it where like you get it almost right, and it's got that little bit of twist at the tail, or it goes this way a little bit.
Yeah,
it feels right, but it doesn't swim perfect. And there's a difference, and there's genuinely it will impact the way those fish perceive and eat your bait. It will impact, like Nick said, it'll impact the way that your bait swims, impact the way that your bait rides and reacts to hitting things too. And there's times that you can get real finicky, and you can with certain styles of baits, you can rig them so that they'll twist funny, or they'll hop funny, or they'll fall different. Like we do that with tube or jerk baits or a soft plastic jerk bait sometimes. But when it comes to swim bait, making sure it's true both this way and this way is going to go a long ways. So again, I agree with Nick. You don't have to cut the whole head off of it, the Hazardong necessarily, but make that nose nice and flat, and it'll fit a lot better, and it'll swim. It'll ride a lot better too. So
yeah. Andy, you got any take on that?
One of my
digging through tackle
things. I'm shuffling here. I was trying to find it. I don't know how you guys do like storage of swim baits, but I'm a big proponent of keeping them in the clamshells because that's just one more way to keep them ultra straight. So when you go to rig them, you don't have to worry about that boot tail being slightly bent or the middle of the body being concaved in a way that when you rig it, it's already naturally L'd. So I like keeping all of my swim baits in the clamshells. Storing them that way is not very easy, but
No.
I actually won't buy a swim bait unless it's in a clamshell, no matter what brand it is.
Yeah. There's nothing that makes me more sad than you get that swim bait out and the tail's all crooked. And you're like, oh, come on. But if you get like 5 or 6 of them, you just turn them into an A-rig swim bait. That doesn't really matter at that point.
I will say that the nice part about the material that the Spark Shads come with, they do not kink super barely. I'll show you my boxes over there, but I keep my 3s and my 4s in just a big box bin, and that tail material that they're made out of, it doesn't actually hold much memory. So there's certain brands that do, and I would tell you don't ever do it. But with the Spark Shads, you'd be surprised. They actually that material is such a soft material; it has virtually no memory.
He's so right, 100%.
Much more durable. Yeah, it lasts a lot more fish than like a Kitech would.
Yeah, but it also just make sure it doesn't get wet, because if they make sure they don't get wet, because when they get wet they start to do this little like C shape.
Yeah, then they're done.
Then they get like a moldy, not like a moldy texture, but like a molded texture.
Yep. Don't let them get wet, but they'll be fine in the box. So yeah.
I think that's what I'm most petrified for, because I think my favorite bait to throw all time is a mag draft, and I'm so scared of. And I know we weren't talking about big swim baits, but I'm so petrified of bending out those tails because that feels like such a waste to me.
Well,
I don't even think there's even a way to fix it.
You can always boil them.
You can boil them?
Yeah. If you heat up a nice pot of water, not like crazy hot, but you put those tails right in there, just the bottom part of the tail, it'll straighten that bad boy right out. I promise. Cool. I do it with all mine. Anyway. Yeah. If you ever get a mag draft that's like wonky, because I've got a couple that I'll use, but they're not totally beat up and I lost the package. You just pull them out, you stick them in some boiling water. That tail will come right back to form.
Huh.
I wouldn't
but
the tail section you can do it and it's totally fine.
I'm gonna have to try that because I think they're 8 inches. The Spark Shad, the 8-inch Spark Shads.
7
inch was
7.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know if it does with the 7-inch Spark Shad. I don't know if the Spark Shads do it or not, but I know the mag draft plastic that they use with the mag draft it does work.
Oh, well, I had won 3 of the 7-inch Spark Shads in like some giveaway, and this was before I watched a Chris Aldane video of how important it is with, especially the Megabass, like the packaging, keeping them in there when you store them. And of course, I threw that away, not watching the video, being dumb, and so I still have them, but they're all warped. But they're warped already, so I might as well at least try boiling them.
Give it a shot. Yeah, give it a shot. There's videos online about how to do it with other plastics, but try it with your mag drafts. I think it'll bring them back to life for you, or your Spark Shad. I think it'll bring it back to life.
I'll have to give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. But quick question, going back to the screw head. For me, that's always been something that I play around with. Maybe like when I'm throwing like a spy bait per se, and like they won't commit on it, I'll put maybe like that screw head on. What are to you guys, like what advantages do you find, or like a place where you find to throw that screw head?
Nick, you get to go first this time.
Well, you know what? I love throwing that screw head when I'm around spooky fish. I just find that just making long casts with that and getting it's a little more subtle than the spy bait is, and your hookup ratio is a lot better because it's a single hook.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost always, and with the difference is with a spy bait, they're a little bit heavier. You can make longer casts, fish them a little bit deeper. You can't do that with an 1/8 ounce head. But if I'm fishing shallow water, shallow cover, some patchy weed and stuff like that, I mean that Hazardong, the Spark Shad with the screw head is money. I love it.
Heck yeah. Andy, have you played around with the screw heads at all?
I got about 30 of them.
So no.
Are you pleading the 5th on the topic? Yeah.
So I had this conversation with somebody else the other day. I go, there's a lot of things that I don't talk about.
Yeah.
Leave it at that.
Like it's in a special spot in the boat, so if anybody goes looking, they're probably not going to find it.
I'm gonna go search your boat next time.
You better look a little harder next time.
Like, to be completely honest, it's in the most obvious place, but everybody overlooks it, so that's why I put them there.
That's funny. I thought you were gonna say like by the batteries or something crazy.
No. Like, it's the most accessible place on the boat. It's not even in like the tackle hatch. It's literally I can just open up something, grab it, and rig and go.
Right.
I personally, like, if I were to throw that bait, which I never do, it'd be bright sunny skies and very calm, spooky conditions that those fish can see you from a mile away. I want a longer rod, 7.4, 7.6, 8, maybe 10-pound braid and 6 or 8 pound test, so I can get that ultra long far cast.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Absolutely.
I think with that, then we'll transition into the rod setups. And we'll start with Cobi for rod setup. Just talking about just a general 1/8 ounce ball head. A 3-inch spark shed. What's kind of your setup? Line, rod, reel, gear ratio.
Yeah. So when I'm throwing the smaller ones, megabass, right? Like the real finessey stuff, like the bladed, like we mentioned, the bladed head. Even sometimes with the regular Okashira head, I really, really, really like the USA Destroyer, the Flissa. It's a long, 7'6" spinning rod, long, deep bending taper. It's got a slow taper to it. It's got a really long, long bend for a nice, slow sweep set. Because oftentimes, like Andrew mentioned, I'm running it on 10-pound braid with 5 or 7 pound fluorocarbon leader. To allow that bait to kind of really do its thing. When I am running like a slightly bigger hook set, like a ball head, for example, 1/4 ounce size, 3/16 ounce size, then I pull out probably one of my most used rods and one of my favorites, the Orochi Double Ecstasy Enforcer. It's a 7.4 spinning rod. It's got a good amount of beef to it. It's got a nice tip section. It's so much fun to catch smallmouth on that rod on a sink with that swim bait setup. I really enjoy it. I played with that with the football head a little bit as well. So if I'm throwing a lighter football head, I will throw it on that one as well. But if I'm throwing a little bit heavier one, sometimes I'll transition into either a casting setup or transition into what's the other one? Blanking on it. The Brigand, the Destroyer Brigand is another one that's really cool for bottom contact especially. So I throw tubes and stuff on that one a lot too. But for bottom contact, that Brigand really, really excels with like that football setup. It's just a cool, unique blank. Again, all three of those were 7.6, 7.4, 7.4. So I really like that longer setup, longer rod, especially for those smaller finesse stuff to not only help casting distance, but just I think controlling the hook set and controlling the smallmouth. It goes a long ways for those elements there. Line wise on the bigger stuff is pretty much it's usually 10, 15 pound braid. With a long, 10 pound or 8 pound fluorocarbon leader, pretty much is almost my across the board setup there with that stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah. I'm the same with the Okashira. I'm the Flisa, so 7.6. I have it on my Exist Daiwa spinning reel, 7 pound braid, and I go 6 or 7 pound fluorocarbon leader, so really light, thin line, just to wing it out there as far as I can. And that rod just takes there's so much bend in it. It's just a beautiful belly's got a lot of power. Once you put the hook in there, just let the fish go. It's a wonderful rod. I actually use it for drop shotting as well. In the summertime, deep drop shot. It's a great rod as well. When I start getting into like 1/4 ounce, 3/8, 1/4 ounce, you know what? I actually like the Addermine, the Destroyer Addermine. So 6'11", it's a great. Some guys use it as a drop shot rod, but it really does have a lot of power. It's not as tip light as a traditional drop shot rod. When I start getting, and again, that's more I get into like 10 pound test, 8 pound fluorocarbon leader, 3/8. You know what, man? I fell in love with that P5 Windbuster. I got one last year. I'm telling you, and I can't even explain to you how smooth. First of all, it's off the charts light, super sensitive. You can feel everything that bait's doing, but the bend is so smooth in that rod. And I'll tell you how I knew it. When I broke my wrist, I broke my good arm, and that's what I'm holding the rod in. So making casts, that jerkiness of that rod snapping, it really felt like someone was literally pulling my wrist apart. Because even though I had taken off the cast, I was nowhere near 100%. So that day, I'd rigged up the Wind Buster. It's a P5 destroyer, 7'2", medium action rod, nice bend in the belly. I had it on 10-pound, it's 16-pound braid, but it's a JDM braid. It's ultra thin. It's almost as thin as going to like 8-pound braid. So super thin. 3 8-ounce head fishing in 25 to 30 feet of water. And I fished it on a 3-inch spark shad and a 4.2 Hasdong shad. Man, when you cast that rod, my wrist didn't feel anything. I mean, it's so smooth. Cool. You can make whale casts, and there's so much power in that rod that when you pull back even from a distance away, every fish is pinned, no issues. That's my 3/8. It's like that's the sweet spot. You could go to quarter, and you could start getting up to 5/8, but really 5/8 overpower it. So when I'm getting into that bigger stuff like 5/8, it's the Brigand or the Enforcer, 7'4", so either the double X or the Destroyer. Lots of power, lots of leverage to make long casts, and just a way better fit when you start getting into that 5/8. I mean, you can creep into the 3/4 ounce, but once I start getting into that, I'm going to a bait caster. It's just too much weight for that rod. But the Brigand and that Wind Buster are my two favorite when I'm out in deep water. Those two, literally, it's all I had on my deck all fall. I never, for the 5-inch spark shad, I brought in some of the bigger sticks, but on those calm days when I needed that finesse, those two rods were all you needed.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Andy, any points to add on to that? Because obviously, like we said, this is something that we've discussed a bunch, especially when it comes to bait casters.
Yeah, I mean, once I get anywhere from a quarter up, if I'm throwing 4-inch spark shad, we'll say if I'm throwing a 1/4 ounce and I'm slow rolling and I'm doing that pendulum thing, I'll actually throw it on a bait caster. 7-footer or 7'2" rod, but it's got to have that good belly action in the rod. So almost have parabolic bend to it, but I like it on a fast tip. A little bit longer jerkbait rod would actually work really well for a swim bait on like a minnow style head and a paddle tail and slow rolling it over the bottom, killing it. So I like a 7.2. I'll throw it on like a medium light or a medium action rod, fast, extra fast, but it has to have that parabolic bend so I can actually hit into them, but I'm not worried about them coming off when they pull back because it has that power and extra give. That perfect blend. You have to find the perfect rod for it, is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, do you guys think how crucial is a fast tip on a obviously for most spinning? I'm assuming extra fast or a fast tip is important, but take a casting rod, that fast tip. Is that what you want with a swim bait on a casting rod? Do you want that faster tip, or is it more of a moderate to moderate fast? Start with Kobe.
Yeah, I think trying to think how to answer this properly, because sometimes it can be lost in translation from what people mean by taper versus tip section and speed. I think having, especially when they're eating a swim bait, I think having a rod that has enough give in the tip portion, but a quick response to the midsection can oftentimes help and allow that fish to not only engulf that bait, but then it's more of a sweep set. There's very often that I find myself, I'm not necessarily jacking them. It's more of, you're reeling and you get that bite and you just keep reeling and lean into it and you just keep that tension hard and you just, you're letting that rod kind of set the hook for you. So I think of the Enforcer a lot because that's one of my favorites. The way that rod kind of flexes and goes from it's a fast action rod, but it goes from a really nice tip section to that solid midsection. So there's enough that when that fish is surging that the rod bends with it, but then when they're biting it, it's getting that hook positioned perfectly every time because the way they're eating it, and the way that rod allows that bait to be positioned by the time you meet that midsection and the way you're setting that hook, that's to me is huge, is very important, because if it's too stiff, you're not going to have enough time for them to absorb it, and bite it. You're just going to pull it out and hook them right here on the outside. If it's too slow, you're not going to be able to bury it, especially in an angry smallmouth that's clamping down on your bait. So you got to find that perfect allotment to allow that hook to position correctly.
That makes sense. Nick, any input on that?
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. If the rod's too stiff to me, you just don't, the fish cannot, it's more difficult for him to suck it in, right? So you're always, lip hooking them outside. You need a lot of chances to get them to get loose. So I like a rod that bends back down, but again, exactly what Cobi said, right? You want that power in the belly. You want it to be able to flex back quick. So when you feel that bite, you can pull back right away and that hooks in. And again, it's just a sweep hook. Like I know guys reel down and they snap it like your flipping stick, but that's not the right that's not the right hook set. Different hook sets, but for this, just that fish has already got it. All you're trying to do now is just bury the point of that hook in its mouth. That's it.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll find myself on that single swim bait bite with the bait caster. When they eat it, I'll reel, and as I'm sweeping into them, I'll actually walk backwards and reel fast.
Yeah,
because burying it in that top quarter of its mouth, you want it anywhere from the roof into the side, and that's where they're not coming off with that hook.
Right.
You're almost setting the hook more with your abs and your waist than you really are your arms.
Yeah.
You're turning into them, and you're just reeling as fast as you can.
Yeah.
So this is the funny thing. This is the reason after I broke my wrist, a swim bait became such a big thing to me, because it was easy for me. I didn't have to reel down and try and pop that. I just couldn't do it. I mean, even drop shotting, if I had a fish on the graph and I would throw down, that's a really, you don't realize it, but when you're healing from a broken wrist, that pull up is not good. So I don't know if you've seen some of my videos, but you could see when I pull up on it, I'm like, oh man, that's not good. I actually was putting my hand on the shaft of the rod to pull it up to kind of help that hand. So that swimming, and just the fact that you're already turning the reel, it's literally just a pull back a couple turns and that hooks in.
You didn't try going ambidextrous on that and switching your rod handle?
You know what? So when I went to get the cast taken off, this was in early October, cast comes off, and I have a tournament in Lake St. Francis, which is St. Lawrence River up near Quebec. So I'm driving to the hotel in the morning on the way to go to this tournament to get my cast taken off. So the doctor sits me down. He's taking the cast off. He's like, okay, I've done an x-ray. He goes, your wrist looks good. Just keep doing what you're doing. You got to take it easy. He goes, what are you doing? Are you going home? I go, no, man, I got a tournament to go to. Like, oh, man. So he gave me like a soft phrase. And he's like, so I had to use a bait caster. So I was switching hands and reeling with the busted wrist. But it's like, heavy current up there. It's all like drop shot and big, Carolina rigs. It was a disaster, but I had to switch hands and it was fine.
You just took your wrist and duct taped your wrist to the rod, so it didn't even matter. Molding it to your cast.
I'm sure there was a lot of ice that night at the hotel.
Oh my God! Listen, don't even joke. The last day of that tournament, my partner actually fell in the water.
Oh man!
So he had a hooked fish. I put my rod down to get the net, and my bait's dangling, 2-3 feet in. We're in heavy current, like we're talking 3 miles an hour, right? Yeah. So I go down to get the net. My rod starts taking off. I guess while he was fighting his fish, I looked down on the graph. I'm like, there's a bunch of fish following your hooked fish. So I get the fish, and I guess a fish that followed must have grabbed that bait because it yanked the rod in the water, and it was one of those Western flips, the old destroyer.
No.
Yeah. So he put the fish down and ran for the rod, and as he reached for it, he slipped off the edge. But man, I'm telling you, it was the scariest moment because from being like a foot away from the boat, by the time I blinked, he was 20 feet away.
Gone.
We're wearing like heavy gear, and he had his life jacket on. I don't know how he did, but he had it on. And I turned the boat around and he was gone, man. I had the trolling motor on as high as I could. I caught up to him. He was going down and I ended up grabbing him. So I got this busted wrist. I'm trying to hold on. I literally put my hand underneath his life jacket just to hook him in and get him to the boat. But now the way the boat was turned, the currents is trying to pull him under the boat. Man. And I'm trying to work with my busted, my healing wrist. Dude, I'm telling you, like I was scared, but trying to be calm for him. And I ended up basically dragging them to the back to where the motor was and yanked them up. But I mean, it was just, it was one of those. And we had 2 good solid days. We ended up, I don't know where we finished 8th or 9th in that tournament. But I mean, it was, I remember coming back to shore and I'm thinking to myself, man, this was like, it could have just gone the other way. So, if he didn't have his life jacket, there was no way I could catch him.
That's crazy.
You're not jumping in the water to help him because if you're going in, you're done too, right?
Yeah. So, what a mess. Did you get the Western flip?
You know what? So
always worried about it, right?
The only thing I could use was those Western flips. I had 2 of them. One had a Tatula on it. The other one had a Steez A. Thank God the one that we lost had the Tatula on it. So I still had the one Steez A. I was like, man, I can't lose both these. Yeah,
no kidding.
It's gone.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Legend has it that fish is still swimming around with that rod.
I'm telling you, man, it's just everything happened so fast.
That's crazy. Into that fish later that day, and he comes up with a.
Imagine. We just won $1,000.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Score.
Anyways,
well, I think that. Do you guys have any other factors when it comes to swim bait fishing that we didn't go over? I think we kind of cover the majority of everything.
That's really good, man.
Besides letting out your, I see you guys laughing without your juice.
Please no more.
No, listen. We come on these shows. We come on these shows to, we're just going to talk, nonsense, and there's no point being here. So, we try to give as much information without, we got to leave some to the guy that's trying to learn too, right? We don't want to tell him everything.
I made it clear I was not asking for your juice. It's all good. I would never want to spill my beans either. But I do appreciate you guys joining and throwing out a bunch of pointers there for people because, like we said with the jerkbait episode, and swim baits are something that everyone should learn, especially when it comes because, like Cobi said early on in the episode, it's probably the closest bait to being completely universal. Using it absolutely everywhere around the country in different scenarios. So it's definitely something that you want to learn and get better with because, like we said too, there's a lot of details that can be overlooked that are pretty crucial. But I do appreciate you guys joining us for today. Obviously,
thanks for having us. Thank you.
Of course. I mean, I can't think of 2 better guys to get on here and talk about jerkbaits and swim baits because I think if any, like we said in the jerkbait episode, if anyone follows you guys on social media, they've seen the results of what you guys can do with those. So we appreciate the help nonetheless, and I'm sure the viewers and the listeners do as well. And obviously, we'd love to get you guys back on for future topics, episodes, and you're more than welcome to always join us. But we appreciate you guys coming on the show tonight.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Andy, any remarks for our boys here before we sign off?
To Cobi, safe travels to Florida. Congrats on your new personal life endeavors. Yeah. Stay healthy and safe.
Yeah, awesome, bud.
Nick, if you come back across, let me know. And you need a partner, I'll hop in your truck because I'm literally 5 minutes from the Peace Bridge.
Oh, perfect. I'll let you know. I got a package for you anyway. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Maybe I'll hand deliver it.
Well, if the border's open, we'll get that negative test somehow, and we'll try to get fishing, whether it's the Finger Lakes or Canada. Because
anytime, man, anytime.
On Simcoe.
Awesome.
All right, boys.
Okay, boys.
Good
night. Stay safe, huh?
Thank you guys. Take care.
Thank you.